talking about understanding the group format. Okay? With understanding the group format, when we first, CR was running years and years ago, you had a leader, you had an assistant, and there was kind of a rough format. There was a format, but if there was a change from it, it was no big deal. But in order to start a group somewhere, in order to start something, you had to have a leader who would go out and start the group and get people together and come in and do it. Now, when we started looking at this after, pretty much after 2003, we saw that there was a need to relook at what was happening about CR. And I think when you're trying to do something, it makes sense, it's wisdom, to look at other people who have been successful at doing what you're trying to do.
Yes.
And one of the examples that we looked at is 12-step programs, AA, in particular AA. And we looked at the example of Bill W. and Dr. Bob. And really looked at their story. I mean, obviously, we knew who they were. We looked at them before. But we just looked at them from the point of view of what they did that was so simple. And one of the things that they did, which was really simple, was when they came together, they didn't come together with a view to helping lots of people. They came together with a view to helping themselves. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, and I'm sure I believe it's pretty close to what actually happened. But when Dr. Bob and Bill W. first met, Dr. Bob had said to him, he says, listen, I'm not really sure if I can help you. Or no, he says, sorry, let me rephrase that. He says, I'm not really sure if you can help me. And Bill W. says, I'm not here to help you. I'm here to help me. So the understanding was, this was something that Bill Wilson needed to do in order for him to stay in recovery. Now, it went back. I mean, he was in recovery from a different type of group at the time. So there's a whole history behind that. It's well worth reading if you ever get a chance to look through it. But what we took from that was the simplicity of repeating what we do here. Is that CR should not be so complex that it must have a leadership. Really, if AA can start with 2 people, then CR should be able to start with 2 people. There's no reason why it shouldn't. So really what we were talking about is, well, if as the Bible says, where 2 or more are gathered together in my name, there I'm with them, right? I'm in their midst. So Jesus is right there where there's 2 or more gathered together. So where there's 2 or more gathered together, you can have a group. Now, I've been at a group when there was only myself and one other person there. And we still had a group because I'm there for me. I'm not there to lead the group. Because if I was there as a leader and say my assistant shows up, well, then I'd feel like there's really no point in having a group because we're both in recovery, blah, blah, blah. When in truth, I need this just as much as anyone else. Amen. So it was that simplicity that we wanted to capture within what we were changing within chemical recovery. Because we wanted to make it so that anybody could adopt this. Anybody could put this together, and whether they were part of the congregation or they were outside of the congregation, to keep it simple so that people could just put it together and it was effective. Because it had been totally effective for us. So what I wanted to look at today is understanding the group format. And the first thing I want to see here is the need for a format. Do we really need one? Is it important for us to have a format? Now, we all go to jobs. In some cases, some of us are retired, okay? But we have jobs. Within those jobs, there are processes. There are procedures that need to be followed. And the reason those are there is for safety's sake, for repetition, for growth, a whole bunch of different reasons. But they're there and they're solid and they're in place. And in a lot of cases, you can get into a lot of trouble for not following them. Okay? So as part of CR, there needed to be a format. There needed to be something that was so simple that any 2 people coming together could say, we can do this. This is not difficult. We can definitely set this up. So looking at the need for a format, The first thing that I noticed here was that people who are in recovery need stability. Now, looking online, and there was a really great quote from a website called alcoholrehab.com. And it says, when people first become sober, they can feel a bit overwhelmed by their new reality. They now have to face life on life's terms, and they no longer have the option of running away to their chemical refuge. Life can be tough initially for people in recovery, but the situation can be improved if the individual develops some type of routine early on. This will provide them with a bit of structure that can be comforting. So long as the individual does not become too obsessed with their routine, it can be a wonderful asset. So looking at that is saying that someone coming into the group, they need to have a sense that this is a stable environment they're coming into. Now, stable environment, what's stable about the group? It meets the same time every day. Or not every day, sorry, every week. It meets once a week, and it meets the same time, whatever that day happens to be. It's not, well, this Sunday it's going to be 8:30, next Sunday because of such and such a thing, maybe something's running late, it'll be at 6:30, and the week after, people feel a lack of stability when that kind of stuff happens. So the one thing that we talked about with a format was that it meets at the same time. It's actually written into the rules. When we look over here at the rules here, it says that there is a specific rule here that says be on time. Doors close promptly at the designated time. Now, there is an option for whoever wants to use that poster, and everybody should be using the poster who has a group, is to put in whatever that time is. Okay? So if it's 8:30, we always meet at this time. Okay? So that kind of a stability where man, at this time, if I arrive, there's a group going on. And we've had people come into the group I attend who haven't been there. There was one guy came in, he hadn't been there in 2 years. But he knew that if I go back to the same place at the same time, the group's going to be on. Yes. And he was right, So it's that kind of a stability that people need. That I know that, listen, at this time, on a Sunday, between this time and this time, this is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to make sure I'm going to go. And it's that kind of stability, at least personally, that helps me in my recovery. Okay, so we definitely wanted to have a sense of stability with the group format. The second thing, and this is I always think this is very funny, that when we present this in different places to different people, I think the first thing, there's always the kind of a handful of people in the audience that want to change it immediately. They see something and go, have you thought about this? Do you think this would be a better way of doing something? And the other point we wanted to make is when we put this thing together is that we're not looking to continually fix this. This works. What we're doing works. So, as the man said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay? Because too often we can have somebody who looks at the traditions and go, have you thought about this as a tradition? Have you thought about that as a tradition? Have you thought about the other as a tradition? Well, chances are we have thought about those things. But what we found from years, really, combined with the people working on the project at the time, over 100 years of recovery in CR, is that these traditions were really the key areas that people worked on that needed to change, and that if you got these things on straight, your recovery was going to be on straight. Plain and simple. Was there other things you should be doing? Absolutely. There's nothing here about your marriage. There's nothing here about your kids. Sure, there's other things you need to be doing, but if you had these things on straight, you're in a lot better place. Okay, so it wasn't designed to be a comprehensive summary of the Bible. It was designed to be some traditions that we could easily pull out and ask ourselves, how are we doing in this area? And be able to self-examine on each of those things. So we wanted to have consistency. Now, I talked about consistency in the time of the meeting, but it was more than that. It was consistency in how the group was laid out. Because, you could come into the meeting and some leader is doing that, and he likes to do it a little bit differently, or she likes to do it a little bit differently. She likes to do it like this, or he likes to have a devo first. And then he likes to have a good news sharing. And it's like, no, we need to have a format that everybody is going to adopt. And that everyone can be happy with. I mean, they may not feel like, well, this is the very best format in the world, but they're going to feel like, listen, we know this works because of who it came from, so we're willing to put this into action. We're willing to see and run with this and make this work, as opposed to sitting there and, well, let me find all the things that's wrong with it and let's change it.
Yeah.
Okay? And the other thing we wanted to do was we wanted to keep it simple.
Yes.
See, the whole thing that we saw about AA is it's really simple.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's simple. And this is one of the things they say in the rooms is keep it simple. Just keep it simple, because we have this habit of really making things complex when they don't have to be. We talk about with recovery, people, places, and things. That's really simple. Now, a lot of times if I'm talking to, I was talking to somebody just this week about their brother who was having issues. And it came down to people, places, and things. When the person who had sobriety went back to doing the old things with the old people in the same old places. So, recovery's simple. There's very few lessons that you need that if you hold on to those lessons, if you really hold on to them as tough as anything, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You're gonna remain in recovery. Amen?
Amen.
So keeping it simple. And then the last thing that we're looking at is that you want to keep personality outside. That, to me, is probably one of the biggest areas that we ran into with approaching people. Because, unfortunately, people like to be known as leaders. And, you'd have people who, you're a leader, but you don't show up to meetings. You're a leader, but you don't attend groups. And it's like, well, how are you leading? I mean, the beauty, I think, of the program and taking away that leader title was the fact that I don't feel any pressure coming to a meeting other than to deal with myself. I don't feel like that I have to, people are watching me for a great example. It's like, man, if you're watching me for a great example, please stop. There's plenty of other people you can watch for a great example. But I don't have to feel that pressure because I'm not the leader. Okay? So when we first were talking about this, we were talking about, well, who's going to lead this thing? Well, there is no leader. People would look at you like you're two heads.
Right.
No leader? I mean, what? This isn't following the normal leader, assistant leader. That's why we call it a fellowship. Because it wasn't following a ministry structure. It's following a fellowship structure. It's following a structure whereby everyone is there for their own recovery. Now, if you're not there to recover or to work on your recovery, you have no reason to come. We don't need an audience. It's not necessary, but it's really a case of where folks are going to turn around and work on their own recovery. So we came up with a format, which we'll show you right now, and this is available up on the website. You can download it. And what we do in the group that I'm in is we have all these things within a book. There's like a small book, like a flyer, something you get from Staples real cheap. And everything is in there. This format's in there. There's 2 versions of this format, which we'll talk about. But the format's in there so that you don't have to remember it. So in reality, if you come in and start doing your own thing, someone's going to say, there is a sheet with the format on there. You could go back and look at it, because the thing is, I don't want to come into a group that's different. If we keep feeling like we have to reinvent this group every time we come into it, we're not getting anything from it. Okay? Having a format means it stays the same all the time. You go to Home Depot and you buy a measuring tape, and you look at a foot on that measuring tape, and you go into Staples and you buy a plastic ruler, and you put the foot ruler next to the measuring tape you got from Home Depot. will the foot be the same? Are you sure the foot, like the Home Depot foot is 10 inches and the Staples foot is 13 inches? Why is that? It's a standard. Believe it or not, there's a bar of metal in a museum in France that is the accepted length of 1 foot. That is the standard of 1 foot. And everyone says, we'll accept that as being 1 foot. So that we're all working from the same program. So if you build a house in Texas or you build a house in New York, a foot is a foot, an inch is an inch, a millimeter is a millimeter, centimeter is a centimeter. It looks the same. Okay? That's what we're talking about. It's a standard. It should look the same. There's no need for someone to feel like they have to come in and, I feel wise today. I think I'll recreate Seor. I shall bring my amazing wisdom into the room with me right now, and I shall now fix everything that I feel is broken in here. You laugh, but I've seen people do that. They may not have come out with that wording, but that's where they're thinking. That's where their mind is at. And it's like, let's just keep it simple. Let's just keep it real simple. The group format has an opening song and a prayer. Now, we've had people, there's where we meet right here, there's several 12-step programs. And we've had people come and visit from the 12-step programs, coming to group, and they come and join us. And when we start singing, the looks on their faces are like, what are you doing, you know? Singing? Will we have an interpretive dance after this? But you see, what we have to remember is, listen, in the beginning, AA was a spiritual group.
Yes.
It has lost most of that now.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not saying every group because AAs can have their own little kind of idiosyncrasies. But Seor is a Bible-centered group. We understand. We're not talking about a greater power outside of who God is. So we're not looking to communicate anything other than that. We are standing here clean and sober today because God. Okay. Nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with our talents, our abilities. It is purely God. So we're not looking to communicate anything else. So we have a song. We give praise and glory to God through song. Now, does that mean everybody standing there can sing? Of course not. Now, the funny thing is, and this isn't a side note, when I was drinking, I love singing. When I was drinking, we'd be in a bar and we'd be belting them out. Now, I won't even attempt to sing the kind of stuff we were singing in bars. But now all of a sudden we're in recovery and we're all shy about singing, you know? All of a sudden singing has become this alien practice? Seriously? And it's like, we have a song, but that doesn't mean everybody has to. You do your best. If you don't know the song, okay, clap along. Snap your fingers. We had one guy come out and he started harmonizing. Just hadn't even heard the song probably before. He starts harmonizing with it. We're trying to do something with it. Great. And we're not. This isn't America's Got Talent. We're fine. Just join in. You don't know, and then you always find out the guys who have rhythm and the guys who don't. Yeah. Guys who clap on the beat and then off the beat, right? Yeah. But we start with an opening song, and we start with a prayer because we know where recovery comes from. Amen. Now, do I need God to get clean and sober?
Yes.
Well, people would argue with that. People would say, well, I've been to recovery groups that have nothing to do with God, and I've gotten clean and sober. But you see, what people are missing is the fact that, the rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous. That God blesses the unrighteous when he wants to. So the very fact that someone who's unrighteous wakes up in the morning, that's God. The very fact that you can see this morning, that's God. The fact that you can breathe this morning, that's God. Now, you can deny that all you want, but it doesn't change the fact. If I deny the existence of the IRS, it doesn't forgive me of having to pay my taxes. I still have to pay my taxes. Right? So my denial of something doesn't change the reality in one way or another. Never does. So after that, we generally have an introduction where we go People give their name, drug of choice, and then we have some kind of an icebreaker question. Sometimes it's like, well, we try not to make it as kind of like, well, what's your favorite ice cream? Okay, we try to be a little deeper than that. But it's like a question of, what's something you're working on in your heart right now? We want people to start thinking. We want people to listen to. You're coming into a room where you're going to participate. You're coming into a room where if you don't participate, you're going to really stand out. Okay, because you're here to work on your recovery. Note the word work on your recovery. Okay? So we ask some kind of a question like, well, what are you working on? Because you know the thing, if you're not working on anything, right? Something's working on you, right? Absolutely. Something's working on you. Now, we can come up with various different questions, but they shouldn't be something terribly complicated. We help people to understand what a drug of choice is. A lot of times people will come into the room and say, well, my drug of choice is cocaine, marijuana, heroin, mushrooms. Drug, singular, of choice. And we help people understand what is their drug of choice, right? We move on. We review the group rules. All right, we talk about what are the group rules. We're not going to go through them right now. These are the rules and the traditions. We review them. We ask somebody, are you okay with following these rules today? If you feel like you can't follow these rules today, then probably better for you not to be here today, because these are the rules. What are the purpose of the rules? They take control of the group away from me. If I happen to be facilitating the group that day, the rules take the control of the group away from me. I don't want the control of the group. I don't have the best opinions in here. So if someone arrives, our meeting starts at 8:30, and this has happened recently. Someone comes in the door at 8:31. Are they coming in the group? No. Oh, that's not fair. Yes, it is. It is fair. Because group closes at the designated time. It doesn't close at a minute after the designated time. It closes at the designated time. And we came from a lifestyle where we didn't like rules. We didn't obey rules as someone else said. We obeyed our own rules, if we had any at all. So part of recovery is obeying rules. So we review the rules. We review the traditions. Again, the traditions are printed out. They're downloadable from the website. We have them in the book. We put them in the book as well. And people can either read the actual tradition or they can share what that tradition means to them. It's up to them. Generally, we pass it around the room and each person takes a turn. I'm not going to go through these, but here they are here. We go through them all and say what is involved with either the person sharing it or the person reading from it, right? So after we do that, and we might have a little question after that, might have some, this morning or today, which tradition do you feel like you've been working on this week? Or you feel like you haven't been working on this week? Because we want people to think about their recovery. To put, were you thinking about tradition? Did you even think about these things this week? Did you give them any thought? It's worthwhile. Their traditions are solid scriptural teachings. Okay, there's nothing unusual about them. We look again at we have some good news sharing, just what we had before we started here. We all share good news. Why do we share good news? Because for so many of us in recovery, it's just negativity. We want to get rid of the negativity. We want to see very clearly, this is what God is doing in my life right now. Now, whether it's something as important as recovery from a terrible disease, or it's something where I just got my license back. Right. These are all things to celebrate. The Bible says rejoice with those who rejoice. So we can definitely rejoice with these things. We look at anyone who's picked up a drink or a drug in the past week or since their group last. We address that. We help them with it. They're going to share what the situation is, and we relate back to them. Okay? And then we move from whoever's picked up to someone who's been tempted. Now, a lot of times we clarify with folks what a temptation is. Okay? A temptation for this room is not just a thought. We can have lots of thoughts. Now, when you're early in recovery, if it's a thought, we'll talk about it. We'll address it. But what we're really talking about is somebody who made a plan to use. Somebody who maybe went into a liquor store, but they didn't drink. They didn't pick up and use. But they were on the cusp of doing that. And we're going to help and deal with that, address that, share and give input, right? And we move on from that, we move to the halt, regrets, resentments section. And I'll just move back here. We look for the halt, regrets, resentments, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. We explain through what we mean by that. Regrets and resentments, which are some of the biggest areas where people go back and use again, where they relapse, is regrets they're not addressing, resentments they're not addressing. So we go and we talk through these things with anyone. And what can wind up happening is, we may not always have time to discuss this stuff in the group, okay? But what we do is we make a commitment to that person that we'll talk afterwards. Because anyone who's been to group, there's 3 groups really. There's the group before the group, there's the group, and there's the group after the group, right? We all know there's really 3 groups to go on, right? But after a halt, we make sure that we get a tradition in. We need to teach on a tradition for that week. Now, alternate weeks, there's a journal. So when we have a journal, it replaces the place of halt. Okay, so halt is removed, the journal happens. But we always try to do a tradition. There should be someone who's appointed to do a tradition. On the website too, there's sign-up sheets where people who come to the group on a regular basis should be signing up to do a tradition or should be signing up to facilitate in the group. Okay? Exactly. As we call it the business or the tradition. They should be signing up to do that. This is all part of service. This is all part of outreach. You don't really understand your recovery if you're not participating in service. Okay? So once we have the tradition lessons for the week, we normally close out with a feelings check. The feelings are mad, sad, glad, afraid, or embarrassed. Not happy, joyful, crazy, tired. No. The feelings we talk about are the 5 feelings. They can pretty much cover any base. I've never found a base where they couldn't cover.
Games.
So, huh?
Games.
Games.
G-A-M-E-S, for the feelings. Yeah, it's just the acronym.
Oh, the acronym GAMES. Okay. Okay, great. Oh, okay. See, there you go. GAMES. Very good. That's a new one there. Remember, you heard that right here today. Games. Good stuff. Excellent. We close out with a feelings check. And then we close out with a prayer and a song. That finishes the group. Okay? Now, there's a couple of things you can add in there if there's free time, because we never know what, from one group to the next, you never know what you're going to walk into. Yeah. So if there's free time, at times we'll do what we call strokes. And basically what strokes is where someone will say something encouraging about someone else who's in the room. So it's just really to lift people up, to let them know that you're making a difference, that we see what's going on, that God is working through you, and we will do strokes. But this is the group format, and a lot of considerable thought went into this, and really a lot of looking at seeing what worked and what didn't work. So in summary, as I'm coming close to my time out here, that it is essential to adhere to this format in order to be effective in helping those we know with their recovery. More importantly, we also need the stability in our own recovery. So the group format is not a suggestion. It's not like, hey, use this if you don't have anything better to go by. The group format is something that has been put together by men and women who have, like I said, over 100 years of recovery combined through prayer, through fasting, through making sure that God is working through all of this, and being open to see what would work and what doesn't work. So, and all of these, all the information that you need for this is located on our website, which is www.chemicalrecovery.org. You can download it from there. You do need to become a member of the site in order to access the download area, but that's free. We don't sell emails or anything like that. It's just so that we don't have people downloading stuff for no reason. So that's it for the format of the group. I want to encourage us that as we attend groups, as we see groups, if we see areas where this is not happening, I just want to encourage us to speak up, say something about it, and give a reason for why you know that what we're doing works. Amen? Amen. Thank you.